Welcome to our Urban Legends podcast. I'm Dr. Gloria McDaniel Hall. I've been a teacher, a principal, and assistant superintendent, all within urban schools in Chicago and around the country. Our Urban Legends podcast is a forum for sharing ideas, strategizing together, and supporting each other as we dismantle the deficit narratives sometimes associated with urban education and discuss where and how amazing work is being done. So welcome everybody to episode number 42 of Urban Legends. I wanted to make 10 episodes when I first started, but I just meet people all over the place who I know I need to speak with to put on this podcast so that we can hear about the amazing work that they're doing. And suddenly I go to the bookstore across the street from my apartment building. It's a beautiful bookstore called Call and Response. And you should check it out if you're in Chicago. But while we were there, it was kind of a crowd. And afterwards, this beautiful woman, Stacey, came up to me and said that she knew me. And I didn't even remember who she was. So Stacey, do an intro. Tell everybody how we originally met. And then we'll get into the meat of it.
Yeah, well, I have very fond memories of Miss Gloria, who was a principal at CICS Basel at the time where I was responsible for, I think during the course of your time there, I was responsible for two things. One is to get teachers hired. That was one of my primary responsibilities. And then ultimately, I was responsible for the teacher training and development in Teach for America. And I just always remember when I would visit your school to coach teachers and whatnot, it was always such a warm environment. The teachers who taught there always had nothing but positive things to say about you. You were very welcoming. You would come to our interview days that we had. I don't know if you remember, in the basement where you interviewed candidates and stuff like that. Yes. In a office on Orleans. So that was where we originally came to know each other. And I'm sure, given our brief interaction years and years and years ago, it comes as no surprise that I wouldn't have stood out, because you were doing amazing things with so many teachers there. And so it was just a pleasure when I happened to see you across the room. I was like, oh my gosh, Miss Gloria. Miss Gloria Hall. That's who I knew you as back then. So that was the genesis.
Well, thank you so much for what I know is going to be an amazing conversation today. So I always start with asking people about their background in education. So you told me that you started as a 6th grade reading ELA teacher.
Yeah, I actually am going to go back a little bit further, because it was my first professional gig. But it always is important for me to start off my relationship with education by talking about how I grew up. So I grew up on the south side of Chicago, 83rd and Essex. My sister, who's 3 years older than me, she went to CVS, Chicago Vocational High School. It was an incredible school in its heyday. But by the time my sister went there, it was not the type of school that people would be enthusiastic to send their children to. I remember my sister, when she would come home from school, and I was just in like 7th, 8th grade at the time, but she would come home from school and she would talk about fights that had happened and some of the things she was doing, making boxes, because she was studying engineering. So she would like bring home electrical things she had been working on and whatnot. So it was a positive experience, I think, for her. And at the same time, the students that went to that school were confronting things that young people should not have to confront at point in their lives. Meanwhile, and this is completely at the direction of my grandmother, who you hear me talk about a lot, Teresa Potts, born in Columbus, Georgia. She said, Stacey, you're going to Whitney Young. I had never heard of the school. I didn't know anything about it. I found out it was all on the west side. I had to take 3 buses or 2 to get there, depending on if I could walk to the bus stop. I had to wake up 2 hours early to go to this magnet school where the emphasis was really on academic education. The assumption was that everybody was going to go to college and, have these positive careers afterwards. So I didn't have language for it at the time, but the achievement gap existed in my home between me and my sister. And so I knew the things that she was working on in high school were things that, she was working on them later in her high school career. I had worked on them earlier. So I knew that some of those things weren't likely as challenging as they could have been, or her opportunities to be challenged more weren't as plentiful given her particular path. So anyway, I say that to say I just didn't think it was fair. And so I always had an orientation toward education. The very first job I got paid for was actually at Chicago Public Schools. I was 14 years old. It was my first job. And I worked in the warehouse where when all the teachers would have to administer standardized testing, I was responsible. I got a sheet. It would say Brown 32, Hall 24, Wilmington 17. And so I had to count out 17 Scantron papers and 17 pencils.
Wow.
So I feel like my career and my experience with education goes very deep.
It goes way back. And I remember getting those boxes when I was in the classroom.
That was me.
That's amazing. Okay, so you as a teacher.
Yes, I do.
What's your favorite part about teaching too?
Oh my gosh, my favorite part about teaching, I know this is kind of cheesy, and I know people say this all the time, but it really is true for me. And that's the aha moment, where a kid is just working so hard. You can see they're trying to figure out a concept and it's just not clicking. But it's like when you get to be there to bear witness to the moment where they're like, oh, that's what it is.
That is the best sound ever.
Right? Like, that's the difference between just any old noun and the subject. Like, yes, subjects have to be nouns, but nouns, every noun is the subject. And they're like, oh, I get it. So that is definitely the moment that I enjoy most as a teacher, but also just getting to know my students. I spend time in their homes. They would visit me as rewards. I remember when I was a teacher, I told this one student of mine, incredibly intelligent, but just not, he's like, I'm not interested in this stuff. So I was like, if you get an A in my class for this next quarter, I'll come ride 4-wheelers on your farm with you. And so we did, and I had 2 students one was from Mexico, one was from a different country in South America.
Oh.
But the point is, being in my classroom was the first time that they were in the public school system in this country. So they did not speak any English, whatnot. And so I just remember on parent-teacher conferences, one of my students' mothers, she brought an interpreter with her because she was like, I want to be able to talk about my daughter with her teacher. And I started speaking to her in Spanish and she just broke out crying. She was like, I'm so grateful. So she would come to my house to cook empanadas, and there was another student. They taught me how to cook tinga. So that community relationship, being in my son's baseball games and all that, like, that was just really powerful for me.
I love it. So while we were doing our prep, our mini prep for our session today, you said something so profound about this idea of our schools being microcosms of the communities in which they exist. Can you explain that a tiny bit for our guests?
Yeah, so the short story is that I get kind of grumpy when I hear people say bad things about Chicago, as if it's this, monolith, and what you experience on any side of this incredible large city with lots of people is just going to be the same no matter where you are. And that's just not true. Me being from Chicago, born and raised on the South Side, I know that there are some places that feel like, some communities, when you go into them, they're block club parties, they feel connected. Some you go to, nobody's out, everybody kind of drives into their garages and whatnot, and the experience of different parts of the city, different neighborhoods is different. And I feel like that is also exactly true for a school building. You can go into one classroom, and the minute you walk in, you can feel the warmth, the decorations in the room. You can see that there's high quality instruction happening, students are engaged. And in the very next classroom at the exact same building, you could see the opposite. You could see it doesn't feel warm. You could tell that the students aren't engaged. Instruction might not be happening at a high quality level. And so it's just really important, I think, to not overgeneralize, because you miss some of the shades of color, you miss some of the texture. And honestly, like, it's just unfair to paint such diverse groups that you can find in communities, that you can find within a school building, with such a broad stroke.
It really is. It's the exact reason, Stace, why I even started this conversation, because it just was all so negative. And I know that I've been in schools where people are like you said, there could be classrooms, but then there's some whole schools where they're trying to focus on this idea of building relationships on purpose. And that's with all staff members.
Yeah.
And those stories typically aren't told about our schools. So that's one of the reasons why I've wanted to do a podcast, so that we can have those conversations. So that just leads me into two things. One,
I want to ask you one thing first.
okay, ask me.
You have worked in so many schools at this point, both as a instructor or a part of the staff, but also supporting other principals as well. I'm just curious, like, what are some of the characteristics that you've seen in schools that don't get the shine that they deserve? Like, can you think of a school or an experience where you were like, oh my gosh, how do, like, people don't talk about this?
So I worked at a school in Cleveland, and the reason why that came to mind when you asked that question is I was given in 2008 a promotion to be what they call the director of school quality. What that meant was, for the schools that were urban schools in the network of charter schools that I was working in, they couldn't figure out what to do. They were trying to do everything. You know how in the classroom you teach to the middle, and you shouldn't teach to the middle because you're not reaching anybody when you teach right there? They were leading us in the middle. And so it worked for the schools that were suburban in our portfolio of schools. But in the schools where we needed to differentiate the way that we support kids and the way that we support parents, and we get students coming in 3 and 4 years below where they should be, we can't use the same curricular tools that we were using in other schools. And not to say that we don't want to have high expectations for kids, because we certainly do.
Oh, absolutely.
But there's ways that you got to scaffold that, and you can't just throw teachers in, go figure it out. Like, you got like 5 levels. You got from kindergarten to 5th grade in a 3rd grade classroom. You got to help teachers figure out how to do that. Well, anyway, I, as a part of that promotion, was given a school in my portfolio that was in Cleveland. And the crazy thing was, they had to make a certain state number on their achievement test, or they were going to be closed in a year. So messaging that to parents, messaging that to staff, getting them not to quit. No, don't quit. Like, we're going to do what you all. Like, me and the principal, she was a first-year principal.
Oh.
So I almost had to live there with her.
Ooh.
We worked every 7 days a week. Thought about stuff. She moved to Cleveland. I moved to Cleveland. We planned all the time. I had to mentor her as a first-year principal, but also let's push these scores. And not only did we make it, we superseded the number.
Come on.
We superseded the number. And so it felt so good for everybody. The teachers did not quit. They believed that we were going to be able to do it. She didn't quit. She believed that we were going to be able to do it. Kids were motivated afterwards. Parents were so excited. The city celebrated. It was everything, because we came together and we knew that it was something we needed to do. That school is still there. It's still open, still thriving. I was so excited because we put the systems in place, not because of me, not because of her, but because we forged relationships so that people knew we need to get this score, but it's not just about this score. It's about us all growing together. And they believed me, and they believed her. And so we were able to make that happen at Apex. So what do you, as school leaders, you've worked with a lot of school leaders, and you have a consulting company that you founded called SAGEli. What are the big leadership lessons that you've learned? How do you work with the people who are in your, caseload? I'm not sure if that's what you call it, in order to see progress over time. How do you assess where they are and what you need to do with them? What does SAGEli do?
Yes. Well, thank you for that question. I want to start just by expressing so much gratitude for hearing you share about coming together in the community. I'm going to come back to that, because I think one thing you shared there is one of the things that I've noticed as kind of a through line for leadership, the strongest leaders, But I'll say first, I have the great privilege of leading SAGEli Consulting. It is a organization that focuses on helping individuals and leaders realize their fullest potential so that they can make positive social impact. So my clients are mostly in the education field, but not exclusively. And so I'm grateful that with my clients, the areas that I primarily focus on our number one, organizational development. And this is helping folks think about what are their strategic plans, what are their culture, what are their core values, what goals are they setting, and how can they match up their money and finances to meet those goals and whatnot that they have. The second area that I get the privilege of working with my clients on is people management and development. So this is how can you coach and develop people? How can you think about their professional development plans? How do you recruit, onboard? How do you develop them? How do you manage effectively, et cetera? And then the third area is coaching, which is where I spend time with folks of all management and leadership levels who are really usually taking on some particular task at that particular time. Either they've stepped into a new role or they're taking on a new project, and they need some support, thought partnership to really help get them to the next level. So with all that said, across the board, when I think about leadership, whether it's inside of education or not, I just think a lot about relationships. And I heard when you shared your story, like that was really at the foundation of it. People have to know who you are. I think a lot about the movie The Help, where I can't think of what the name of the character was, but the actress Octavia Spencer, I think is her name. She was being invited by this young white woman who was not a part of the community to participate in interviews where she had to share very vulnerable personal things that she's experienced as a maid in the homes of these white people that could not only put her job at risk, but also her life. And one of the things that I remember distinctly about that movie is that when she finally agreed to do the interview to share about her experiences, she said, I need to face you straight up. So she required that she move her chair from one side of the table. She needed to see all of her, at the same time, to see what her movements were, what she was doing, to build trust. You've got to eliminate the barriers to those relationships. You've got to eliminate ego.
Yes.
You've got to eliminate dishonesty. You've got to eliminate aspirations for who you want to be and just be real about who you are, what strengths you have, what areas are you growing. Because that whole idea of relationships, I really think it's at the center of everything. It helps to build trust. It helps for people to learn and grow. Because if I tell you, Miss Gloria, I'm not good at cooking, how much easier would it be for you to just help me be a better cook? I just tell you up front, but no, we try to act like we know it all, that we figured it out. So it's hard to develop skill with people. People don't disclose to you where they need to learn and grow.
Yeah.
There's no trust. And so whether it's a curriculum that folks are working on, whether it's a strategic plan, none of that. I think Peter Drucker is the person credited with this quote, is that culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Right.
And so I've just seen that time and again in leaders who really prioritize relationship building, not for the purpose of watching Grey's Anatomy together or being in a, jogging group or, having happy hour together, but truly to help understand what drives people, what motivates them, what it takes for them to be successful. Those are the leaders who I've seen really excel regardless of what sector they work in.
That is amazing advice. A lot of times I think, especially because my new focus is with what we do or need to do differently to support new teachers. Typically, I see schools and they just throw the new teachers in with everybody else during PD at the beginning of the year versus how do you learn best? Tell me what you need right now. I will stay with you after school and help you unpack stuff.
Yes.
I even at one of the schools, I think it was at Basil, there were some teachers, and almost everybody was new, you know that. But there were some teachers who still hadn't gotten their rooms decorated. And we were about to start school. like in a week, and I'm doing the walkthrough and like finding out what I can do to help. They hadn't gotten a paycheck yet. So they couldn't go to the teacher's store.
Right.
So I had to make me a list, and I went to the teacher's store.
Yeah.
And got the stuff and then brought it back and then helped them do their room. They never forgot that. Never forgot the fact that, and what was it, like $60, like of stuff, but it gave them a head start, but it also got them to believe that they could, anything they needed, they could ask me. And if, I didn't have all the money to do it, but whatever I could do to help them.
And here's the thing, this is what I think, Ms. Gloria. I don't even think it's about the money, because even once they told you that, you could have not had resources to get what they wanted, because the school just might not have had it, or you might not have been able to use your own personal resources in that way. But here's the thing, which is like the power and glory of Ms. Gloria and strong leaders, period, is that you were there. Like, there is a value to proximity. Like some stuff you have to show up for. You can't dial it in. You would never have found out that a teacher in this school building was not getting a paycheck, a foundational requirement of a role, had you not physically been there, had you not actually engaged them in conversation. So you got to walk the floor, and I've been in some schools where you never even see the principal. The person who's doing the classroom evaluations is not the principal of the school. It might be somebody else. And not to say the principals have to spend all their minutes doing that kind of thing, but what I'm taking away from what you're saying and what resonates with me about my own experiences is that leaders show up for something. Some stuff you phone in, some stuff you delegate, but you have to be there. You have to be present. And I think that was the power of I'm sure they were glad to get stuff in their classroom. I think the biggest asset to that was that they knew you were there.
I love it. I love it. So you've done SAGEli. You have obviously done like amazing work in the field. Teachers and all other kinds of consulting. But if I were to ask you, tell me one of like your biggest success stories, something that like really like you were like, yeah, this is the reason why I'm doing this. What would that be?
I would honestly, and I say this with no ego, I say this in all sincerity, because my life professionally has really been dedicated to helping to support, encourage, advance experiences and lives and potential of people who've been underrepresented. I happen to fall into that category. I'm a first-generation college student. I never imagined I would be a business owner. Like, that seems so far outside of the realm of possibility. Not to mention leaving a job at the Obama Foundation, an incredible place, to start my own business. Like, that just seemed out of this world, to my community, to my family. And for me to have been able to have proximity to people like you and Ami Banks Davis and so many others who have really poured into me, for me to have grown professionally. A lot of my friends now, they had children at very early ages. They struggle financially. I even think about the path that my sister's life went on to carry a little bit further. Working at the post office, which is incredibly honorable work, and work that if she's not on her feet delivering mail, she's not getting paid, period, which is different from salary positions and positions where you get benefits right out the gate and that sort of thing. So I feel like something I'm really proud of, honestly, is myself. I'm just really grateful to God, honestly, that He would allow me to have the opportunities that I have to try to create opportunities for other people, given what all the statistics would have said about where I should be or like where it would be most likely for me to be. So I just feel honestly really grateful for that. And I know that may not be
no, that is a better answer. That is amazing. And okay, so you talked a little bit. Tell me about your grandma and her influence on you.
Oh my gosh, Teresa Potts. Just by way of a biography to introduce my grandmother to the world a little bit more. She was born in Columbus, Georgia in 1916. She was the eldest daughter of her mother, Rose, and her father, James. And I don't think she ever knew her father, but she moved here with her grandmother after her mother passed away, I believe in childbirth. It's not entirely clear. So her grandmother, who's also named Teresa, raised her here. Teresa, at that time, Teresa Chandler, her grandmother, was a land-owning Black woman who was illiterate. So my grandmother was 6 years old. She's like having to read correspondence that's coming from the South so that her grandmother could navigate,
All this she had
going on down there and sending money and all this type of stuff. Ultimately, my great-great-grandmother, Teresa Chandler, lost the land in the South because there was addiction in the family and money that was being sent wasn't being spent properly.
Yeah.
But whatever the case is, I feel like even from an early age, my grandmother had to demonstrate leadership characteristics. She ended up having 8 children of her own that she raised in different parts of the north side, mostly in Cabrini Green, but in different parts of the south side of the city until in 1974, she made this significant transition to become a homeowner. And so she bought a property with my auntie, Karen, who was also dearly departed. And that was the beginning of my life there. It was my mother's last year of high school, but that was where my life began. I was born and raised in that one house, stayed there my whole life. And I saw so many characteristics in her that I try to emulate, 3 of which I'll articulate now. One is the woman was steady and persistent. Like she was there every day. There was a meal on that table. There were vegetables and a starch and a protein. Oh gosh, every day. And she was up in the morning. Her bed was made. Like the woman was steady. And I hope that people who experience me and the people that I work with experience that I show up. Like if I say I'm going to be there, I'll be there. I do my best to do what I say I'm going to do. The second thing is she had this unwavering commitment to excellence. We did not have a lot of resources growing up, but she would always say, like, you don't have to be the smartest person in the room, but do what you're supposed to do well. Like whatever it is that you got to do, just do it well. And I hope people experience that for me as well. I by no means am a perfectionist, but I do aspire, not only because I feel like that is what my grandmother taught me, but also because working with our students, they deserve our excellence, don't they, Miss Gloria? Working with
all our excellence.
all of it, working with young leaders who are really trying to become the best version of themselves, they deserve our excellence, right? So I try to show up with that. And then the last thing I'll say is that my grandmother really modeled for me an appreciation for the complexity of the human experience. Poverty didn't look the same way that it does today necessarily, because even if you didn't have a place to live, you had a floor to sleep on. Somebody would let you throw a pallet on the floor. You could sleep on the couch. We took care of each other. But you could look at somebody and they might not look the hottest, but they could be sitting on top of the world and just have joy and peace in their spirit that you could never understand. And some people you look at, they're like they got it all together.
Right.
And they're falling apart. But my grandmother would say, it doesn't cost a dime to just say hello to somebody. And she just appreciated that people are in different places. Just make space for people. Just let them be, and that kind of thing. So hopefully I try to approach my interactions with people just from a deep sense of humanity. We're all going through stuff and it's okay. Like we're together. We'll figure it out.
I love it. I love the ending with a message of hope, especially now the way the world feels. I'm scared to turn the news on. This is going to be such a good episode. Thank you so much. Now, the last thing I need to ask is if there are people who are listening to this who want to connect with you, whether it's for consulting, for you speaking to a group or their school or some sort of partnership, what's the best way for people to reach you? And tell us about your social media so they can find you there too.
Yeah, well, I am mainly available in 2 places. One is on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn handle there is Stacey D Mitchell. So if folks go there, they can find me, but also my website, which is sageliconsulting.com. And that's spelled SAGELI consulting .com. And so I'm in either one of those places. I am active on LinkedIn. I try to pay attention to what other folks are up to so that I can learn as well. And I'd be grateful to connect with anyone who feels moved by the conversation we've had here today.
Thank you so much, Stacey. I cannot, there are probably 150 gems that I heard from you today in our 30-minute conversation, but I am so excited to have had this opportunity to speak with you. Please keep in touch.
And thank you for having me. I just think what you're doing, dispelling these myths about our schools, our students, our communities, that is God's work. And storytelling is what's going to get us to where we're headed. That has been a part of who we have been for centuries. And that storytelling, no matter what books are banned and this and that, we will tell our stories. We will capture, and share out what happens in our communities. And so I'm just so grateful that you are the griot in so many ways of our communities in Chicago. So thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me to chat with you.
Thank you.